Welcome to our Breakfast at Sustainability's event. We're very happy that you are all joining us. I'm going to share some slides with you so that you can see what program we have in store. And we start off. Here we go. So this is the 36th edition of the flagship ICLEI event series, Breakfast at Sustainabilities, an online version, obviously, but we're very happy that we can welcome so many of you from across Europe and beyond to join for this event, which is a special edition because it is it is run by the Sonnet Research Consortium, and the focus of the event is the Fit for 55 package and the role that social innovation in energy can play in that, policy opportunities, as well as the challenges that the great speakers that we have lined up for you see ahead. So the purpose of the day, as maybe some of you have already read in the briefing that we shared with you to prepare, is to bring together local and European policymakers, advocacy groups, and researchers to explore what role social innovation in energy can play in the Fit for 55 package and how this role could be enhanced. So if you want more background information at any point, feel free to scroll through the briefing that you also have. So the program that we have today, I would like you to ask you to mute yourself if you haven't done so yet. By the way, I hear some background noises. The program that we have for you today is first to kick off with some introductions with Julia Wittmeyer and Caroline Roge, who are part of the Sonnet Consortium and who are going to talk to us about exploring the diversity of social innovation. What does it mean? What are we talking about? As well as the added value and benefits of adding policy mix thinking to this discussion. So after these introductions, setting the scene, we're going to call in the help of some great panelists. We have two people coming in from the European Commission, Emily Van Dam and Cristiana Marchitelli, and three people from civil society perspective, Giorgia Rambelli from ICLEI, Stavroula Papa, and Dimitris Tsikeris. And we're very happy to have them all on board to share their ideas and observations when it comes to the opportunities and challenges for Fit for 55 and social innovation in energy. So afterwards, after a short break, we will invite you all to submit your questions for our panelists. So any questions that pop up during these presentations, write them down, remember them, because we are going to ask you to submit them to the Mentimeter platform that most of you probably will already be familiar with, and give you the opportunity to vote for the questions that you want to see discussed. So we've been trying to not just have me as a facilitator decide what questions are being discussed, but really to democratize it a bit by allowing you to vote up your preferred questions. And then finally, we're going to have a reflection on this discussion, and we're going to introduce the graphic harvest that we have, the live graphic harvesting for you wrap up. And as you've all probably seen, this briefing that we shared had beautiful illustrations, and those were made by Carlotta Cataldi, who is, as we speak, has already started with making illustrations to represent the core of all the topics that are discussed today, and very much look forward to seeing what she prepares for us during the final graphic harvest reveal moment. I also realized that I haven't mentioned my own name yet. My name is Tessa de Geus. I work at the Dutch Research Institute for Transitions in Rotterdam. From a very misty Rotterdam, I'm calling in today. And I'm very happy to facilitate the discussions today as we explore this terrain together. So some notes. I already said it. If you're not part of the panel, we ask you to mute yourself. But we do also ask you to start with your video turned on, because we do think it's nice to know who is in the room and to have a bit of a feel of a crowd. Do know that the event is being recorded and will be shared online afterwards. Videos will be something that you can see, but the chat won't be reflected in that recording. As I said, if you have any questions for our speakers, please save them for the Mentimeter. So we have one place where we collect them all. And if you have any technical difficulties, you can use the chat to message Adrian Kotler, so she can help you. All right, I already saw Lina popping up, sharing her video. Good to see you. All right, then finally, from my side, as part of the introduction, we are also on social media. So these are some of the hashtags that you can use: Breakfast at Sustainabilities, Fit for 55, Social Innovation, Energy Transitions, and find us at Sonnet Low Score Energy. I would like to give the floor to Adrian to talk a bit about who is joining us today exactly, and the Breakfast at Sustainabilities event series.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Tessa. Hopefully you can all see my screen now with our Audrey Hepburn starting slide. My name is Adrian Kotler, and I'm in a fortunate position where I work both for ICLEI and on the Sonnet project. So I'm here both because this event is being hosted by ICLEI Europe in the context of our Breakfast at Sustainability series, and also as someone who works on communication with Sonnet. So I'm going to begin by telling you very briefly about this series, in order to just sort of set the scene a little bit for why we're coming together here, and then I'm going to reflect on who's present and how we're bringing you together. So just very quickly, I mentioned that this series is hosted by ICLEI. So for those of you who don't know, ICLEI is a global network of local governments committed to sustainable development. But in this context, the series is hosted by ICLEI Europe, and we are the European Secretariat. We have about 150 members who are all local governments. And we work with them via joint action, peer learning, partnerships, and also in this kind of policy and advocacy role, which is more so where this event series comes in. The Breakfast at Sustainabilities event has been going on since 2010. Actually, one of the speakers who we have coming up later in the event, I think may have been the person who even coined the event title, Giorgia Rambelli, who will be joining us. Typically, the idea is to bring people together in person in Brussels over breakfast. So it's meant to be sort of a semi-formal event and also a fairly local event, since we do have local, national, and EU representatives already based in Brussels as our kind of low carbon event series. Of course, it's a bit different in COVID times, but the benefit is that I'm sure many of you wouldn't have been able to come in person, and now we're able to bring in many more people as a result of going online. And typically what happens is either a city or a project will come up with a concrete challenge or question, contact ICLEI about it, and then our team in Brussels will bring in various different experts to try to tackle that question together. And in this case, of course, that challenge that we're discussing is the Fit for 55 package accounting for social innovation energy, and what opportunities and challenges are there for the package to better support social innovations that our cities and our projects are taking on. And that was just a very brief overview. If you're interested in either joining an event or getting in touch with us to explore a specific challenge, there's some links there that will also be in the recording. But that leads us to the 36th edition, which is all about social innovation and the Fit for 55 package. Now you're going to get a detailed overview of what all of this means in a moment. So the only slide I'm going to share with you is I just wanted to discuss a bit about who's with us today. As you know from this presentation, Breakfast at Sustainability tries to bring together people from different levels of governance and also from different backgrounds. Today, we have mostly researchers, but also about a quarter of registered participants are policymakers. And then we have another chunk of people who work either in industry, advocacy, or consulting, who are all coming together here today. And we hope that this diversity of perspectives sheds light on the challenge that we're trying to tackle. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen and we can pass it off to the proper presentations to get them going.
Indeed, thanks, Adrian. Great to see. So indeed, we're going to kick off with Julia Wittmeyer, who's going to lead us into the world of the diversity of social innovation. I can still see your screen, Adrian.
I know, I'm trying to stop. I apologize for that. Perhaps Julia is actually able to just grab it back from me, but otherwise I will continue working on trying to stop sharing.
Okay.
I can't take it without you.
There we go. Okay. Success.
Good. All right, the floor is yours, Julia.
Thank you very much, Tessa. Yes, good morning, everybody. Happy to take the floor and introduce our work on the diversity of social innovation in energy that we have been working on in Sonnet. And this workshop really wants to put social innovation in this very specific context of the current Fit for 55 package of the EU. And one of the issues that I think we will be certainly discussing is how social innovation can contribute towards achieving this policy goal of cutting emissions by 55% until 2030. And in that aspect, the event today is basically based in kind of a longer history of EU institutions, but also other policy-making bodies looking at social innovation as a promising instrument to address certain societal needs or wanting to or policy goals. And a very important starting point has been the work by the Bureau of European Policy Advisors, BEPA, that was situated in the aftermath of the global financial crisis back in 2008-29. And it basically stated that social innovation is an effective way to respond to societal challenges, and it can empower people to make better use of resources. And this understanding has been picked up by others, such as the former president of the European Commission, Barroso, or also the Research and Innovation Commissioner Moedas after him. And this is just illustrative. More recently, and I just spotted Giorgio also in the audience, there has been a link made on kind of being taken up by the JRC, so the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, on social innovation and energy, so making that link. And also here we see that for policymaking, one of the interests really lies in using social innovation as a kind of a lever or instrument to address societal challenges and reach policy targets. But before we go into this kind of meaning that social innovation can take or the role, let's take a step back and think, okay, what is social innovation actually? And there's really a pluriformity of very different definitions out there, both in academia as well as in practice. And what we can say is that most of these really converge on the object of change being the social, and that can be something like social practices, so practices that we collectively engage in, but also relations between actors, individual and organizational actors, as well as ideas, so ideas that kind of start guiding our behavior and materialize in that way. It also relates to something that is new, renewed or reinvented in a certain context. And across those different definitions, what we also see, it can refer to changes more in the micro, so only addressing a smaller group of people, but also on a macro level, so really kind of being diffused to a broader group of people. And finally, this important point is that actors, that social innovation is being driven by actors that really have this aim to address a certain societal need or contribute to a certain societal goal, but that it does not mean that social innovation as such actually addresses this need or contributes to that goal or whether it contributes basically to some other goals as well. So in divorcing this intent of the actors from the actual empirical phenomena, this is where we start defining social innovation in the Sonnet project as these combinations of ideas, actions, and or objects. And we refer to this as kind of a configuration of these three things that change social relation and that then involve new ways of doing, thinking, and or organizing energy. So rather than assuming that it contributes to a certain goal, this definition really allows to question whether, how, and to which extent it actually does contribute to transformative change. And to give an example, I will take the one of the cooperative renewable energy production, also commonly known as community energy, because it is kind of the example that is always kind of taken up and everybody has knowledge about it. When we talk about social innovation in energy. So it combines ideas, the first point, ideas about how energy can be produced, locally based on renewables, with objects that make it possible. That can be windmills, PV panels, but also actions that kind of putting the panels on the roofs or investing or applying for subsidy, for example. So, and the configuration of these three things then can change or has the potential to change the relations between neighbors that are involved in the cooperative, between citizens and their local or national government, but also between incumbent industry actors and cooperatives as kind of new market entrants. And then it involves these new ways of doing, thinking, and or organizing energy through the ideas of decentralized, decarbonized energy production on our own rooftop, or the investment in local wind turbines, and organized in, for example, a cooperative model. And building on this understanding of social innovation, what we have been doing in Sonnet is that we developed a typology, and this typology differentiates between these different types of social relations. That is the social phenomena that is changing. And we make a distinction between cooperation, exchange, competition, and conflict, and between the different ways in which social innovations in energy actually manifest in the energy system, namely through these new ways of doing, thinking, and or organizing energy. And then what we have been doing is that we did a mapping of 500 social innovation in energy initiatives across 8 European countries to differentiate 18 different types of social innovations in energy. And this allows them for more systematic identification, but also analysis of this diversity. What we immediately see that community energy, or what is usually kind of put under this term, is in the upper left corner only, but that there's much more diversity in what social innovation can be in terms of how these kind of initiatives are changing relations between different actors in the energy system. So what to take from here? Or important considerations for what we will be discussing is that there's this whole range of diverse social innovations. So when we're talking about social innovations in energy, it's important to think about, okay, which ones are we actually talking about? And that when we think about social innovation in this diverse way, it's also about moving away from a focus on civil society, communities, or citizens that drive social innovation, but also include policymakers and businesses as very able actors to do so. And often it's also a collaborative effort between those groups. And such actors then are really using a range of different strategies. And this can be from protesting to lobbying to networking, the actual production, or jointly experimenting with different solutions. And it's this whole range of different strategies that we need in order to reconfigure energy systems. And the diversity of actors always, of course, comes with a diversity of different goals. So it's about understanding that each social innovation can contribute to a variety of goals by just changing the way how society functions, but that it also always will contribute to maintain certain elements, and that it has unintended side effects. And it's important to not underestimate those, or not kind of ignore those, like, for example, that social cooperatives are usually only accessible to a certain segment of society. And finally, such a typology, so the diversity of social innovation, kind of provides this snapshot of emerging new configurations. And And if one looks at it with having a certain policy goal in mind, like, for example, this decarbonization by 2050, it helps us to think about which of such social innovations to support, but also which ones to discourage to arrive at that goal from the policy perspective. And this is my last slide. So I leave you with these thoughts and hand over to Caroline. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. And then I'm just going to share my screen. So hopefully you're able to see them now. Yeah. Well, I'm Caroline Rogge. I lead the Sonnet project, and I really like to add to this perspective on diversity of social innovation energy that we are looking into Sonnet, the policy mix perspective. I want to start with the Fit for 55 as a perfect example of policy mix change. So if you think about it, we have our long-term vision of becoming climate neutral in Europe. We have a 2030 target that was tightened. And now what needs to happen to have a consistent and credible policy mix to achieve this target is that the instruments in the mix need to be adjusted. So what happens is tightening existing policy instruments such as emissions trading, but also really importantly to phase out inconsistent measures such as addressing, getting rid of tax exemptions for fossil fuels, but also to see other things that we don't tackle sufficiently yet and introducing new measures such as the Social Climate Fund. Now, what we have been doing in Sonnet is to apply this kind of policy mix thinking to social innovation. And what we have been doing is looking into 6 different types of social innovation in detail, ranging what we already heard, renewable energy cooperatives, and you will hear more about this later on, but also looking at local electricity exchange, and all kinds of different social innovations, and looked into the innovation histories of these to understand the actors in the system and how they behave, their activities, and how these are being shaped by policies and what kind of policy mixes to identify those that are of relevance for social innovation. And I can't go into the details of this, but you have the briefing. I want to share some light on the synthesis findings on such an approach, looking what is the relevant policy mix for social innovation. Well, the first thing we find is that for each of these types of social innovations, there's different strategies, long-term targets, different instruments that matter for this specific type of social innovation. So it really makes sense to look specifically into the different types of social innovation. Also, what we find is it's not just like maybe the local level or just the national level. No, it's really all governance levels and policies from all levels which are important, but the European Union level actually can set important precedents and can stimulate social innovation. So it's important that we talk about this in the context of Fit for 55 and social innovation. And finally, it's also important to know it's not just like the innovation ministries or DG Research and Innovation and other innovation agencies which are putting in place policies which are relevant for these fields. No, actually, when we talk about social innovation and energy, it's most often energy policy and climate policies that matter, both in an enabling but also in an impeding way for social innovation. That's important to keep in mind. It's truly a policy mix that cuts across different levels and fields. What also is important to take away is that it's really the design of these policy instruments that matters for social innovation. So we really need to unpack things and look into the details. It's not so much the instrument type. And that's the same thing as it was also for technological innovation. So we have a great opportunity with the Fit for 55 package to discuss how it can be designed in a way to promote social innovation. And it really has this ambition for transformative change, to encourage that by creating new opportunities for innovation. And that means it's also open to social innovation. But if we look into this and if you search for social innovation, you do see in the proposals already out for the Fit for 55 package that is not even mentioned once. But then if you look a little bit more detailed and look for the different types of social innovation energy that we now know already about and look for keywords, then you do find more attention to it. And in particularly, like as already well-recognized types of social innovation, it's the energy cooperatives that you find. also pro-profit services and technologies, and investment and finance mechanisms. And then there is some recognition for some other types of social innovation, such as experimentation, like the city labs that we have done within the context of Sonnet to try out new things. If you look at the policy proposals and see, well, which policy proposal within the Fit for 55 package is really most open to social innovation, talking about it, it's three that come to mind. And the first two most prominent ones are the Energy Efficiency Directive and the Renewable Energy Directive and their revisions. And there's also then some recognition in the Social Climate Fund. Now, they're based on our assessment, we say, well, yes, social innovation is partly recognized already in the Fit for 55 package, in particular to understand it as creating acceptance for the decarbonization process. But the full potential that social innovation has to offer is not really harnessed yet. So if that would say the same, it's a really missed opportunity, because we need system change, and that's socio-technical system change. So we both need social innovation and technological innovation. And I wanted to share with you some insights from a citizen survey that we've conducted in the Sonnet project, so that you get a sense of, well, is there actually interest in these kind of things? And so we asked in France, Germany, and Poland, asking citizens for, well, different types of social innovation. I just brought four to give you an example. Well, have they already been involved in this? Or do they plan to do this, or have they no interest in doing this? And if you look at this for the classic of renewable energy cooperatives, you see between 4 and 7% of the population have, and this was a representative sample survey, have already done this, but a large chunk, between 20 and 30%, actually really want to do this and plan to do this. And it's similar for crowdfunding of green energy projects. And it's also, and even more so, for volunteering in green energy projects. So there's really a big potential and willingness of citizens in Europe to get engaged, and even more so to get campaigning for green energy. Yeah, and look at the outer bar in Poland, how many people want to stand up and want to go and get green energy transition going. So that means this is a great point in time to design a policy mix, a Fit for 55 package that's promoting technological and social innovation. And I want to invite you to take a process view, a broader view, where we look at design in a sense of designing, right? We need to design these policy mixes, and that means obviously it's a political process. And the question is, how do we get interest of social innovation on the negotiation table? How are they being represented? Particularly those types of social innovation which are not that established yet. So who's speaking for them? Which expertise is sitting there to represent this? And how do we deal with power imbalances and vested interests maybe that want to avoid particularly the disruptive type of social innovation, such as things that we found for the local electricity exchanges. And then the second point I want to highlight is we obviously need evidence. And if you look into the impact assessments that have been already published for some of the proposals, then you won't find much, if anything, on social innovation. So what we need to do more is monitor, and we need then also to assess and evaluate the impact of the policies we have and what they have on social innovation, so that we then can go back and redesign better policy mixes in the future based on our learnings. So I'm really looking forward to the discussion, to the inputs from everyone on the panel on the opportunities and challenges of considering social innovation in the Fit for 55 package. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline and Julia, for starting us off and for already planting in our heads what the critical angles are that we want to be discussing today, such as the politics and evidence. So we are now going to move to the short panel presentations that we have. And as Caroline already introduced, there are two guiding questions for these presentations that we asked our panelists to reflect on. Firstly, the opportunities for considering social innovation in energy in the Fit for 55 package. And then secondly, the challenges, but also ways that these could be overcome. So potential action perspective for us as researchers, advocates, policy workers, etc. So these are the people who we've asked to join our panel. Emilie Van Dam, Cristiana Marchitelli, Georgia Rambelli, Dimitris Tsekeris, and Savura Papa. I'm going to ask them to shortly introduce themselves and their backgrounds. Our first two speakers come from the European Commission, as I mentioned, and our final three speakers come from civil society organizations. So without further ado, I would like to ask Emilie if you could start your presentation and share it with us.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Well, let me share my screen. All right. So it's a pleasure to be here. Many thanks for inviting me. Do you see my screen?
Yes, it's perfect.
All right, perfect. So yeah, as you said, I'm Emilie Van Dam. I work at the European Commission in the Directorate General Research and Innovation for the Social and Ecological Transition units, and I am also part of the Social Innovation Matrix of the DG. So let me directly start. I'm going to complement a bit what Julia said and tell you a few words about social innovation. Because as Julia said, there are many definitions of social innovation. It is a very broad concept, and I think that's, yeah, it can be sometimes a bit confusing for people. So you have one definition on the screen. It comes from the Horizon Europe program guide. So just if for some people, if you don't know, Horizon Europe is the last RNI framework program, and social innovation is one of its cross-cutting policy issues like gender or biodiversity. So what is important to capture is that social innovation engages citizens, public authorities, business and industry, and academia from really the design to the implementation stage of the solution that is being developed. I like to describe it that it's innovation because it kind of shuffles things that already exist in a total new out-of-the-box way in order to create new solutions to societal challenges. And it's also social because it empowers communities and businesses to solve the problems they face. It ushers novel social practices, and it acts as a system changer. And then last important element that I like to understand to explain a bit what social innovation is that it enhances the resilience of local communities, and very importantly, it increases the relevance, acceptance, and uptake of innovation. And just because a picture is worth 1,000 words, I'll give you a few examples of social innovation that you probably all know, but there are urban gardens, there are social innovation, car sharing apps, Wittmeyer cafes, also microcredits, which actually is kind of the historical reference for the first social innovation in 1983. So yeah, the Commission acknowledges the importance of social innovation, and so does DG RNI. So just to tell you a few words about social innovation in our DG, our RNI framework program supports social innovation since the framework program 4, which started in 1994, so a long time ago. Then we jump a bit in time, but we opened the social innovation matrix in 2019. So just to briefly explain to you what is the social innovation matrix. Well, basically we are a group of a few people coming from different units. So we work on social innovation on top of our actual task, which can really benefit because each one of us has a different kind of expertise. Like I work a lot on the Green Deal, for instance. And yeah, we work horizontally across the DG to really advance social innovation in RNI programs. Yeah, to tell you a bit what we do more concretely, For instance, if we take the Green Deal call, so that was the last call issued under Horizon 2020, which was the last framework program. It was entirely dedicated to the Green Deal, and the matrix really advocated to have specific social innovation calls, such as the one for climate neutral and socially innovative cities. Then now we have Horizon Europe. As I told you, social innovation is one of the cross-cutting policies in that program, and there are specific calls dedicated to social innovation. I will not list them all, so I don't bore you too much, but you can see some of them on the screen. Then we also have the 5 EU missions that are part of Horizon Europe. They address major societal challenges such as cancer or climate change, to name those two. And it is really clear that to overcome these challenges, technological innovation alone isn't enough. It will require deep and lasting changes in social practices and lifestyles. So it's really clear that to achieve those objectives, social innovation is required. So they will be integrated in calls for proposals. Now, to move on to really the core topic of this policy dialogue and talk a bit about the challenges social innovation faces as regards the Fit for 55 package. I will take the briefing that you shared as a starting point. It was really well made, and as it was in the briefing, and also Karen told us, social innovation is nearly not mentioned in the proposals. As Karen underlined, there are a bit of exception. I mean, there is one exception, but yeah, it's almost not there. However, it is present in indirect ways that also Karen mentions. So this, in my opinion, perfectly illustrates one of the challenges that we are facing as social innovation matrix and as policymakers, is that our colleagues sometimes lack knowledge about social innovation. And I think this is because, as I said at the beginning, it's a very broad concept and it can be hard sometimes to grasp. And so people don't always see the relevance of social innovation for their policy field. And the proposals in the Fit for 55 package aren't the only ones that suffer from that. I'm just going to talk 1 minute about another European initiative, which is the new European Bauhaus, because I'm working also on it. I obviously won't go into detail because it's not the topic today, but just to summarize it in one sentence, basically it aims at making the Green Deal really tangible for citizens. And actually it is completely social innovation. It's really social innovation by essence. It's embedded in this initiative in the way it is designed, and also looking at what it aims to achieve and how. But if you read the new European Bauhaus communication, social innovation does not appear explicitly while still being everywhere in the text, but implicitly. So this really shows that we need to convince our colleagues at the European Commission, but more broadly, we need to convince all policymakers at all levels of the benefits of social innovation. They need to know what is social innovation and what it can offer, notably in the field of energy. Then another challenge that we face is to build on the results and findings of funded research projects. It's really important to upscale the innovative solutions developed by them. Because yes, social innovation are often developed at local level, and many of them never really make it to the public sphere, let's say. So they remain unknown, although most of them really hold great potential to be replicated and scaled up. So this is another big challenge, in my opinion. Which brings me now to the opportunities that I see and that the Fit for 55 package brings. It's an opportunity to achieve the climate goals while addressing also pressing social needs such as abating energy poverty, which is really a topic important, especially in those days. But yeah, technology alone.
I'm going to ask you to round off, start rounding off.
Oh, yeah, okay, I'm wrapping up. So technology alone won't succeed, and yeah, of course, it's obvious that reducing greenhouse gas emissions in some areas depends a lot on technological innovation. Cement, for instance, is an example of such case. But most areas will necessitate a mix of technological and social innovation to succeed. And achieving the Fit for 55 targets will require sustained research and innovation efforts to develop, deploy, and scale up the needed technological and social innovation. So this is why the Commission plans to propose a European Social Innovation Catalyst Fund within Horizon Europe, and more particularly the missions. This Catalyst Fund would allow to really pull significant funding from Horizon Europe, but also from other public and private funding, including from foundations. And it will aim at replicating at national scale successful social innovation that address the EU missions objectives. Then, yeah, this is my last slide. A scale up in social innovation will also be needed to address issues such as public acceptance and societal uptake, because the key to this success will be the buy-in of new technologies and changes in social practices or lifestyles. So an effective and ethical way to proceed consists in providing people and communities with opportunities to shape policy and to co-design and co-implement innovation. So we need to make really people owners of their destiny. We need to give them a sense of agency and to trust their interest and ability to become champions of the transition. And this is really something social innovation can achieve. So yeah, just to sum up in one sentence, I'd say that our biggest challenge regarding social innovation, more like generally speaking, is really to raise awareness about social innovation among policymakers at all levels. And then when it comes to social innovation in energy, it is crucial, in my opinion, to find out about small-scale local social innovation and scale them up. And then in terms of opportunities, reaching the Fit for 55 targets will require changes in social practices, and that's something social innovation can really do. So it's an opportunity for social innovation to show what it can do and to shine. Beautiful. I'll stop on that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Emilie, for sharing your thoughts and impressions. I would like to pass the floor then to Cristiana Marchitelli, your colleague, for the next presentation.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me. I am Cristiana, and I work in the Director General for Energy in the unit dealing with research, innovation, digitalization, and competitiveness. And today, I'm very grateful to be in this panel today and to join the discussion on the role of social innovation in delivering the Fit for 55 targets, but also the Green Deal objectives as a whole. We know that the participation of civil society will be essential to deliver on our Green Deal objectives. The speakers after me will illustrate the examples of how social innovation will is providing a laboratory of ideas to inform policy making and to inform practice communities in a new way of achieving our targets. You can go to the next slide, please. Next one again. I will just provide our perspective as the Research and Innovation Unit in DG Energy, as we collaborate closely with the DG R&I in co-creating the research program, Horizon Europe, as Emilie has mentioned. In developing the policy making, because as Julie clearly said, the issue here is to embed social innovation in the designing of the policy instrument. This is really what matters. We see that it's reiterated several times that the energy transition to be effective needs to place citizens at the heart of the strategy. So we have a human-centric energy transition. And in order to do that, it is important for us to look into the main motivational factors and strategies to engage them, and situating the consumer and the citizens in the broader social context. And we have evidence from projects that show that there is an increasing trend in projects that are focusing on on a more inclusive approach based on both individual and community dynamics. So in other words, there is a trend on engagement strategies that are based on behavioral change to reach the benefit for the community at large. So we have this approach that aims at changing both the individual behavior and the energy consumption of the community as a whole. And we see that the social innovation factors in as really the accelerator of it all. Going to the next slide. We see that, as Emily said, social innovation in our research program is seen as a cross-cutting issue. And in the past research program in H2020, we had more than 200 projects that were related to social innovation with a big amount of funding. And we're in the effort of mainstreaming social innovation in Horizon Europe now. As Emily said before me, we had in the previous work program 6 dedicated calls to social innovation, and the integration of social innovation in the text is now one of our main priorities in designing the work program for 2023 and 2024. In the Cluster 5, devoted to energy, mobility, and climate, we deal mainly on, and DG Energy is dealing mainly on buildings and energy system grids and storage. We have proposed a very ambitious program of over 300 million euros for the next 2 years to try to have this systemic change, systemic aspect that enhance the flexibility and resilience of the system. Engaging consumers. We have several topics devoted to that. Enhancing the reliability of the electricity system, but also we introduced the green digitalization of energy, and I will talk about this a bit later. Why it is important for us to embed social innovation in Horizon Europe. Going to the next slide. We know, as Emily said, that embedding social innovation enhances for us the chances to uptake the results of the project, because we involve the user, so the citizen and whoever is involved in the project from the beginning. So listening to them, understanding the needs, and benefiting from the knowledge and creativity that are as deliverables. So the way we see as important for us is because the social innovation as a tool, as an approach, will enable us to address several key questions that need to have an answer for designing the programs and going towards our energy targets. So we need to understand how to address the social challenges that the energy transition is posing to society, what kind of social investment we need to take, how to support people in this journey, because energy transition is journeying. So we need to ensure adequate livelihood for people while embarking into the energy transition, because we want citizens to become prosumers. We want them to have an active role. And of course, how social innovation can contribute in making energy more secure, affordable. So all these questions are pivotal for us. So that's why we want to leverage social innovation in Horizon Europe. And all the speakers have done it, said it before me. I mean, energy transition per se is both technological and social dimension. So it is a socio-technical issue per se. That's why we need to embed social innovation in the programming of the research program. And a meaningful inclusion of both social sciences and humanities and social innovation alongside all the other cross-cutting issues that we have is the great chance and opportunity that we have to truly deliver on our commitment to be fit for 55. Colleagues before me, so next slide please, have shown that some policy proposals do refer to specific type of social innovation in energy. So the potential of renewable energy communities is addressed in the Renewable Energy Directive and the Energy Efficiency Directive, but we have other chances to complement these missing opportunities, as the colleagues said before me. And I would like to propose to you how to see this systemic change and to create synergies with the other policy instruments that the Commission has put forward and is currently designing. Because remember what Julie said, it is the design of the policy, is the social innovation embedded in the design of the instrument that matters. So I wanted to briefly touch upon the work that is currently undergoing into my unit, which is the delivering of the digitalization of the energy system action plan for June this year, because we know that we are living in a twin transition. We have the energy transition and the digital one, because we have two main political priorities that we are delivering on: the Green Deal and Europe Fit for Digital Age. So this is particularly relevant for energy because digital technologies can make the use of resources more efficient, can make the energy transition to the use of more renewables more efficient, but at the same time it triggers the demand for new digital technologies and can trigger the development of new services based on data. And the uptake of these new digital technologies needs to be enhanced, and social innovation could be one of the tools that we can use to make this happen, because there are a lot of benefits for digitalization of energy, but those benefits will not happen automatically, nor there are only benefits. We know that a digital energy system can become more vulnerable to cyber attacks. And we know that there is the issue of the energy consumption of the IT sector per se that is increasing rapidly, that we need to tackle. So to face those challenges, we are preparing the action plan. And in the action plan, there is...
Christiana, I'm going to ask you to start rounding off.
For sure.
Yeah, thanks.
The opportunities that we have for the digitalization of energy action plan is that social innovation can help us to design the way to overcome the issue of trust, the uptake of digital technologies, the way digitalization is changing the concept of vulnerable consumers, the energy literacy, the digital divide, and all of this has already been discussed into the Citizens Energy Forum back in December. But we have also social innovation as a tool to engage citizens and youth as a whole. We have the instrument, the initiative of the Climate Pact. We are entering into the European Year of Youth. So this participatory and democracy approach where we can design the policy together. This is just for me a way to list all the opportunities that we can tap into later in the discussion. But going to the challenges, I wanted to just reiterate what Emily said about the the difficulties that perhaps we have in convincing the drafters and the pen holders to the benefits of social innovation, because there are some question marks on how can social innovation sustain over time, what is the perfect governance balance between the bottom-up approach and the top-down approach, what are the different elements at play. So the work that Emily and his unit is doing is pivotal to overcome this barrier, but also another element that the Commission is working on is really on the feedback to policy exercise. We sit on a huge amount of data provided by you, the projects, and the best practices that go around. So we are particularly grateful for colleagues in the agency, CINEA for us and REA for DG RNI, who manage the project and provide us with really data and insights that are useful for us to design the research programs for the future, but also the main interlocutors that we have, the arena for the actors of the quadruple helix that Emily mentioned, like for us in DG Energy, we have ETIPESNet, Bridge. All of this is important for us to embed social sciences and humanities and create the engagement strategies that we need to reach the targets. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christiana, for sharing that. And with this event, hopefully we're already putting word to action to word to action about your final points. All right, moving on to Giorgia Rambelli from ICLEI. Please tell us about the opportunities and challenges you see.
Tessa, I hope you can see me and you can hear me and see my presentation as well.
We don't see it in presentation mode yet. Now we do.
Perfect. Okay. Then please keep me on time, Tessa. No problem. I will be following your instruction and try to stick to my 10 minutes as much as possible. So first of all, I want to thank you very much for the invitation. Of course, ICLEI being a partner of this project is also facilitated into taking part into this conversation. But unlike my colleague Adrian, I'm not directly involved into Sonnet. So it's wonderful to be able to be here with you today and to share a bit of a perspective around social innovation in the Fit for 55 package, but in particular looking into what are the opportunities and challenges and the role the local governments can play. I will not go into this. Adrian did already a wonderful job in introducing a little bit what ICLEI is and the fact, of course, that we are a network representing local and subnational governments of all shapes and sizes across the world. But what Adrian has mentioned, and it's my pleasure to share now a little bit as a outset also for the conversation that we will be having about the role of local governments, is in particular what is our general vision and mission, which is embedded into these 5 pathways that you're seeing in front of you, with the general idea of bringing together the environmental, societal, as well as, of course, economic factors that can really trigger and bring forward sustainable development. So once we are looking into all of this Fit for 55 package, of course, and social innovation in particular, we know that this pathway around equitable and people-centered development remains very much at the core of all the activities that we are performing as local governments, of course. So zooming in a little bit into what social innovation in the Fit for 55 in particular means for local governments, I would like to start maybe beginning from considering what is the role of local government when it comes to the general activities they are implementing on the ground. So they can lead by example, of course, they can create local policy, they also act as planner and service provider to the community that they represent and that they serve. So they have a particular role to connect policy making and a variety of different services that really affect the quality of life of citizens with the community themselves. Obviously, when we talk about Fit for 55, we talk about a large mitigation policies and energy policy, but all of these different policies have an impact, have a domino effect that really affect the lives of citizens across the board, in particular when we are looking into a Europe with a perspective of delivering on the Green Deal with a more interconnected approach to also safeguard, for example, biodiversity, but also our natural resources. So from the local government point of view, of course, this proposal would, for example, be able to affect the design and the delivery delivery of services. And one example that I want to start with from the outset is, of course, the provision of energy communities, in which now local governments have a proactive role to play, but also around setting priorities, implementing action with a great potential to align local policies with national policies and with European targets. And then finally, also an impact on criteria for procurement. And finally, of course, the possibility to allocate and access funding in a different way, but also to implement new fiscal measures. So looking into what local governments can do, I wanted to start with a proactive way and the proactive support the local governments can bring forward to really support the implementation of our common targets for Europe and of the Fit for 55, of course. I wanted to zoom in a few of them in particular. So I already mentioned a little bit this political direction and support that, of course, can be in there. And the Fit for 55 provides an opportunity now to reassess on the ground, for example, sustainable energy and climate action plans, which thousands of municipalities across Europe have developed, to also try to adjust the targets locally and to see how we can deliver on the energy transition and on the climate measures that are needed on the ground. They can, of course, use this opportunity to strengthen the consultation and the co-creation approaches that they have already rolled out on the ground for specific measures, and maybe even looking into how to expand them to really also be able to bring the community on board and into using them, the support and their insight and even their investment, for example, through energy communities, into implementing some of the actions and the objectives that are in the local plan. They can, of course, act as a test bed for innovation, but also support research and innovation, feeding back to the research community what they are seeing on the ground and the needs that they are still encountering, and also open a dialogue on how to bridge these gaps, of course. They can also leverage these new frameworks that will be developed via the Fit for 55 to ensure that there is a better support for vulnerable communities. And here, the interaction and the potential, for example, with the Climate Fund, will be something that could be very interesting for local governments to explore, and the role that they can play also in facilitating the setup of appropriate policies and an impact assessment of these policies rolled out at the national level within their own communities, where they are the closest to the citizens and the closest to these vulnerable communities they are trying to support. Finally, of course, they can support information and raising awareness, not only in trying to shift behavior and to support behavioral change in the community, but also in engaging the business sector. So this quadruple helix approach that was already mentioned in a few occasions by the previous speakers, this is definitely something that is a domain of local governments they can certainly help with. Then finally, what is interesting is also the opportunity to facilitate the beginning of new initiatives and to see how they can connect it to the greater good for the community. So utilizing the opportunities that are out there, for example, to create innovative systems, revolving funds, and other type of business opportunity to fund not only, for example, the energy communities that are being brought about on the ground, but also to see how they can be reinvested within the same community to trigger support for the most vulnerable, to create new employment and new opportunities on the ground. Then finally, of course, the support at large that they can provide through a concrete integration within these policies that are being developed in the framework of the Fit for 55 package to support not only the implementation of the national, the NECPs, but also looking into the national determined contribution and what we can do to facilitate the targets and the reaching of the targets of the Paris Agreement, and then finally also enlarge the Sustainable Development Goals. So zooming in into some of the opportunities that we see, I would like to maybe stress in particular a few of them. Working together, I think it's becoming one of the mantras that we need to really have at the back of our mind when we are developing the new policies. This is shown, and it was also presented by the other speakers, also in the mindset, of course, that European policymakers and at large worldwide, all the communities are trying to tackle climate change with. So working together means, of course, also having a new way to collaborate and thinking and rethinking a little bit the system in which we are engaging. So first of all, facilitating this collaboration to change the system of energy production and consumption. We have already said how this could unlock participation of citizens, but also on the other side, not only foster awareness, foster acceptance of new technology, but also looking into how citizens can actively and financially contribute to the energy transition and to these overarching goals that we have worldwide. The opportunity is also to have a better, stronger, clear, and more stable framework, which will be able to send not only a signal to local and subnational policymakers that are trying to really embed these actions on the ground, but also to the market. Making sure that everyone understands that this is our vision and this is where we are heading towards. We want to become fit for 55. We want to become climate neutral by 2050. This also means, of course, having the opportunity to look into new way of reinvesting within the communities, but also to facilitating reduction of waste, energy efficiency improvement, and really investing, for example, in processes like the renovation wave, and facilitating as much as possible the support also to these vulnerable communities that were maybe not able until now to really access the potential also of the health benefits that energy efficiency can bring to the life of our citizens and of our communities. Then finally, of course, beside the energy poverty reduction schemes that are out there, this is also a great opportunity to engage other type of actors and other type of strata of the society, like, for example, thinking about how energy and social innovation in energy transition can support, for example, gender equality and a better access also, for example, for different types of stakeholders and different types of citizens that are maybe not living only in urban communities, but that are maybe living in rural community, to some of the services that are available out there and they may not be able to be tapping into until now. Then finally,
yes, to start rounding off. Thanks, Georgia.
Yeah, thank you. So the greatest opportunity is, of course, to integrate action as much as possible and try to think beyond, as I said before, just the single silos approach on one specific sector. So looking into cross-sectoral planning, connecting to circular economy, and starting to think about the embodied carbon emissions that we have, for example, in the built environment sector, but also rethinking our energy system, not only as a space where we have production, consumption, and distribution, but seeing how the different parts and the different sectors can interact with one another, bringing together renewable energy sources, heating and cooling, transport, and even utilizing buildings, of course, into this equation. And then finally, it's a great opportunity also to bring forward and strengthen multi-level governance. This is something, this idea of really bringing together citizens and different level of government has been something that has been brought about already in several of the directives that have been developed, but it's not strong enough. It's not quite there yet, where the role of local and regional governments, for example, is not included so clearly and so openly, for example, in the proposal for the climate fund. So just to conclude, challenges still open. Well, the major challenge is really ensuring that the transition will be for everyone, and it will be in particular at the pace that is needed. So looking into what we can look ahead for ourselves, not only in the revision of the Fit for 55 process, but in particular, the transposition by the national government will be an essential component and an essential challenge, because we don't only need a good consultative way of transposing these directives, but we also need to really have the pace that is necessary to meet the objectives and the targets and the goals that we have around climate. Of course, this silos thinking remains a huge challenge, of course, together with the financial capacity. The local governments are still, unfortunately, not be able to fully tap. So rethinking how to distribute these funds. And then finally, also empower them with data and with the resources that are necessary to contribute not only to develop these processes, but in particular also to really understand what the impact on the ground of the social innovation, of the technological innovation is for citizens. I am done. I will share these slides with you together with the colleagues, and I have included a bit of a few examples from different research pieces looking into the potential of energy communities and other type of social innovation here as a little bit of a homework for all of you to look more into. And of course, happy to take your questions both online and offline after today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Georgia. And this is also a reminder for you to remember your questions, to put them in the Mentimeter in a bit, because I'm sure there are questions about all the thought-provoking points that you all are sharing. So we have 2 more presentations before we move into a short break. So I would like to ask Dimitris to share his thoughts with us.
Good morning. Thank you very much for the invitation, first of all. I really also like to compliment the name of the event. It happened that first time I was in Brussels, I was just living across the building that Audrey Hepburn was born. So I will just share my screen. Just let me know if you can see it. If I can start.
Yes, we can see it. It's in presentation mode. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So yeah, a small brief introduction. Already the insights that have been provided from the previous speakers are extremely important. I also got a lot of food for thought. So yeah, my name is Dimitris Tsegeris, and I work as a climate justice and energy campaigner for Friends of the Earth Europe. Friends of the Earth Europe is the largest grassroots environmental network in Europe. And I'm also coordinating the European Community Power Coalition. Feel free to get in touch later on, either by email or you can find me in Twitter. So regarding the European Community Power Coalition, we try to promote the development of citizen and community ownership. It comprises of more than 40, very recently, we're almost 50 right now, like-minded organizations across Europe. We are lucky to have also ICLEI as part of our network. And also the next speaker will be Stavroula, is also REScoop is part of this network as well. So we have energy cooperatives, cities, local authorities, renewable energy industry, legal experts, NGOs, and so on, that we're all fighting in order to promote the development of citizen and energy communities. And in any case, you can always visit our website or get in touch later. So a few words about what we do. We work in mainly in three fields. So the first thing is advocacy work, second is communication, and the third one is capacity building. I will start with an issue that is kind of horizontal across Europe. So the first thing is to realize what is the level of acceptance of renewables and energy communities. Those results have been revealed from a recent poll that has been conducted by the European Climate Foundation in 10 European countries. You can see in the right-hand side which ones are they, in order to better understand the public support for wind and solar. So we came across that with a result that 86% of Europeans support new wind and solar projects in their local area, while a staggering 61%, 6 out of 10 Europeans in those 10 countries would be likely to join an energy cooperative if one were set up in their local area. So that basically means that the people are thirsty to be part of efforts in order to combat climate crisis. They want to be part, they want to innovate on the local level in their local communities and societies. So moving forward, at the same time, we also saw that 79% of Europeans want their governments to provide more financial support for community groups in order to generate their own solar and wind energy. At the same time, as part of our activities within the European Community Power Coalition, we have created a handbook we call Community Energy Guidebook that is available in many languages so far. We have one more. It's also in Portuguese right now. So we have at least 7 translated versions. And yeah, it has many chapters. It has a lot of inspiring stories across Europe and with a lot of resources that are, I think, useful for the reader to get in touch and assess them in order to see what are the chances also for them to be involved in this process. So I will go directly to our discussion today, which refers to the opportunities and challenges in social innovation with regards to the Fit for 55 package. We work a lot, as I already mentioned, with energy communities, and energy communities do have the potential to contribute significantly in order to speed up the energy transition through democratic participation of people. They do have an important role to play in energy poverty alleviation, which is a topic that is recently especially during the last, let's say, months, is coming quite intense in our everyday life, especially due to soaring prices, referring to prices of fossil fuels and more specifically of fossil gas. We have at the moment, according to Right to Energy Coalition, more than 50 million people that are in energy poverty only in Europe. So we have also an opportunity to maximize the acceptance of renewables by making people getting closer and feeling the wider benefit of this process. And at the same time, energy communities have the potential to support local growth through sustainable job creation as well. One thing is to create, to produce clean energy and distribute and so on. The other very important pillar and element is energy efficiency. So energy communities can also be part of this process in order to lower the energy demand, in order to reach the targets that the science indicates that we should move in a more aggressive way. So, and the last part, and I'm also talking as part of an energy community that is actually performing this kind of thinking, is to enhance and ensure solidarity and social justice. As Friends of the Earth Europe, climate and social justice is at the root of all our policy recommendations. So a few words about the challenges so far. It was also mentioned previously. As you probably know, according to the Renewable Energy Directive, the transposition of it should have been already performed by June 2021. This was not the case in most of the member states. So in order for energy communities and social innovation to foster, we need, first of all, to have an adequate framework that is being transposed, that has been already transposed. So this framework, according again to the European directive, must include that unjustified regulatory and administrative barriers are removed, that we have a fair and proportionate and transparent procedures that include cost-reflective network charges, that we have the tools in order to facilitate access to finance and information so that they become available to everyone. And of course, capacity building support is extremely important, especially if it is provided to public authorities in enabling and setting up renewable energy communities. Now, the second is no surprise, funding resources and financing of projects. So energy communities do face challenges in order to find adequate financing for their own projects. And at the same time, we see a trend lately in the across EU that the energy communities do become, let's say, competitors, or they are part of the competitive bidding process, which we call them auctions, in order to be part of the market. This is an issue that has the potential to stall the activities of energy communities, and this is something that also the EU as a whole must address in a very careful manner, and also, of course, the member states. So the last part is a more political, I would say, if I'm allowed to comment, and it refers to the signals that we receive across Europe and the European Union. So the first thing would be the issue of the last delegated act that was published on the 31st of December, referring to the taxonomy, which basically risks undermining the whole process of achieving the goals for Fit for 55 when labeling green investment, nuclear and fossil gas investments as green investments. This is the first thing. And the second thing, as part of the gas package, it has also been introduced a definition about gas citizen energy communities. So if we combine also those two initiatives, we see that there is a risk in the future, if those are implemented, that the targets of the European Green Deal and the Fit for 55 could be undermined, and also that could put a risk also in the deployment of renewable energy communities, and also deployment of renewable energy sources at the same time, where the acceptances through the energy communities could actually grow, and they could also take the prices down. So wrapping up,
yes,
we
indeed.
know that,
time is over.
yes,
Thanks.
I'm finishing in a minute. Climate crisis is accelerating. We can see the devastating impacts all over the globe. Especially the most vulnerable ones are seeing those impacts. We see that inequalities are rising, especially during the pandemic. We have the technological tools that are available right now. We have, and we need the political will. So it is time to unleash this immense potential of community energy in order to accelerate this transition through citizen and municipalities' participation. And we see that the EU must provide the right signals in that direction. And as you can see on the right-hand side, you can see that the richest 10% right now is responsible for almost 50% of the emissions. So this trend has to change, and correctly, previously the other speakers referred to system transformation that goes through social innovation, that goes through social transformation. So we need to hold our governments to account. We need to make sure that there is pressure in order and attention to them. Of course, we think very useful to read the book that I presented previously, take the first steps, and of course get in touch with us if there are any questions. And that was my final slide. Thank you very much, and I hope I didn't take too much time. Thank you. Thank you,
Dimitris, for these points, and also pointing out the political dimensions to us. Stavroula, our final speaker before our short break.
Thank you very much, Tessa, and thank you for the invitation to this event today. It was a pleasure to see also the presentations of the other speakers, and being able to see how they approach the topic from different angles already. Can you see the presentation? No, not in full screen. Now it should be in full screen.
Yes.
Great. So I would like to approach the topic myself from the perspective of energy communities and energy cooperatives as social innovators. But first, let me introduce myself. I'm Stavroula. I'm an energy lawyer, and I work as a project manager at REScoop.eu, which is a European Federation of Citizen Energy Cooperatives. Just some more information about our federation. We're based in Brussels, which is strangely sunny today. We have members, energy communities, energy cooperatives, so citizen initiatives engaging at the national level with sustainable energy projects that they want to contribute to a fair and decentralized energy transition. And we have like a bit less than 2,000 members around Europe, representing a bit more than 1,250,000 citizens. And we also participate, as it was mentioned by Dimitris, to the Community Park Coalition with other like-minded organizations at the European level, and also other coalitions, right? For example, the Right to Energy Coalition. And I would like to start my presentation today with the cooperative principles that all our members adhere to, and to focus to the main principles that are more relevant in this context, which is, in my opinion, the concern for community and democratic governance and participation. Because what drives the social innovation potential is that cooperatives have people at the local level engaging with the local community in energy projects and taking decisions all together. Of course, the social innovation, it was already described a bit in the beginning. The social innovation can be found also in a lot of activities. And here I include some examples from our members. A lot of them engage in renewable energy production projects. Some of them are also suppliers of energy, but they're also important citizen initiatives in e-car sharing, financing and distribution, but also energy efficiency and supporting sustainable building renovation. And the point raised by Dimitris also was the important position and role of energy communities in energy poverty, as they contribute to stabilizing energy prices. They provide administrative and grant support to low-income households, and also educational tools. now the movement, we see the movement of energy communities and citizen participation in the EU growing, and there are also studies revealing its high potential. I would specifically like to refer to a CEDEL study, which was conducted in 2016. And the main outcome of this study was that by 2050, roughly half of the European population could be producing their own energy or at home or as a member of a renewable energy community, meeting 45% of the electricity demand by then. And to me, it seems like a high potential, and it shows the also considered contribution of such initiatives to reach the ambitious European targets set by the Fit for 55 package. And this high potential was already recognized in the clean energy package with the introduction of provisions and support provisions for renewable energy communities and citizen energy communities. It was already mentioned before that they introduced a legal energy communities as a legal entity, that citizens can collaborate with local authorities and small and medium enterprises in sustainable energy projects. And I will not go into detail in terms of the provisions, but I just want to point out that it is highlighted in both directives that the main purpose of energy community is not to provide to gain profits, but to provide environmental, social, and economic benefits to the local community where they operate. And this, by all means, does not mean that they cannot make any profit, especially from renewable energy projects, but then it is the way that they use this money that drives the social innovation. And I have tried to summarize here some main benefits of community energy ownership. So this money allows them to engage in all sorts of other activities, like the elevation of energy poverty, education and raising awareness with regards to energy consumption, and so on and so forth. And then another major social benefit is, of course, the social acceptance of renewable energy projects at the local level. And at some point last year, we have discussed with two other organizations, Select Energy, which is also our member in REScoop.eu, and Heinrich Böll Institute from Thessaloniki, and reached the conclusion that while the environmental and economic impact of energy communities is well recognized and measurable, it is sometimes more difficult to make the same claim about the social impact. So we decided to engage in a project specifically mapping the social impact of energy communities. So far, we have conducted a literature review and a stakeholder input through a workshop, and we have collected, as you can see from this slide, a set of indicators of the social impact of energy communities. And in the next phase of the project, we also plan to involve some field work with energy communities, focusing on Greece. I will not go into detail on these indicators, but I can as well share with you a short report on it if you're interested, and stay tuned for the results. Yes, but I would also like to focus a bit more on the Fit for 55 package and the opportunities and challenges engaged in this package with regards to energy communities. And as in the clean energy package, recognize energy communities as a market actor. Now this Fit for 55 package builds out their role in different files also. So it acknowledges the Energy Efficiency Directive and the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, broadens out the acknowledgement of what energy communities can do. For example, the Energy Performance for Buildings Directive acknowledges that local actors have a role in building renovation. Still, it is not clearly formulated enough. It does need stronger language, both of these directives. And another opportunity we have indicated is that this package also builds out the role of energy communities in energy poverty. The risk, I have indicated energy poverty in both opportunities and risk, and this is because this recognition is not at all backed up with comprehensive and holistic policy around this topic, which is still lacking, and it's very much needed as it was highlighted before. On the risks field, I would also like to point out the gas energy communities provisions that were introduced with the gas package. Of course, this is not part of the Fit for 55, but is a new policy development that is very much relevant in this discussion. And the definition of energy communities as a social concept in the clean energy package does not fit the gas context. It is introduced there more as a technical concept, and it can be engaged with some and connected with some risks, because the citizen energy community definition was mirrored at the gas package, but still we see some risks with regard to the model being hijacked by gas companies, and this is not at all the purpose of energy communities. I can also mention in the risks following Dimitri's point, the draft, the taxonomy draft that was introduced, but also on the opportunity side, this is of course broader than the Fit for 55 package. On the opportunity side, I would like to point out the new state aid guidelines that were introduced and have specific provisions for energy communities. But of course, these are all high-level points. We have developed specific position papers on the different files on the REScoop.eu and EPPD as we are following the negotiations. And I can share with you the link in the chat. But my final comments to close my presentation is that most of the social innovation potential with regards to energy communities lies in the clean energy package. So its implementation is crucial, and we shouldn't forget about it. And the social innovation should also be supported at the national level. It was highlighted already that the transposition of the provisions for energy communities are lagging behind. In REScoop.eu have been following closely the transposition of these provisions. We have produced both the transposition guidance, and lately we have introduced a transposition tracker where we assessed the national legislation on energy communities in different member states, and have also granted a color based on how good or bad the transposition process is going. So I can share with you the link in case you're interested to check a specific country. And that was it from my side. I'm happy to go to the next part of today's webinar and the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Savrula, for sharing your experiences and ideas with us. So we're going to move into a short break now, but before we do, we want to make sure that you know how you can submit your questions, because now we're moving into the part where you let us know what you want the panelists to talk about after the break. So Nicholas, my colleague, is going to share with you how you can do this. I personally always like to use my phone. Unfortunately, we all know how to use QRs these days, because we have to. So you can use that and submit your question like that. Or you can also click on the link that Nicholas shared in the chat, submit your question there. So we're going to invite you to take a short break, 5 minutes, just to stretch your legs, get something to drink. And then you can already see in on the Mentimeter platform what questions people have submitted, and you are all already invited to vote as well. So when we come back, we will already start seeing what questions are popular for us to continue with. So please go to the Mentimeter platform, log on there, and let us know what you want us to discuss for the rest of the session. And then I'll see you back in 5 minutes, so 11:08. See you in a bit. Recording. So welcome back to the Q&A part of our policy dialogue session. I was very happy to return and see what great questions have been submitted. Let's start off. I'm seeing the most voted question. Everyone, make sure that you voted. We have, this one has 9 votes. I'm sure there are more people that want to vote. So make sure that you get into the system, and when you can check out all the the questions that people have submitted so far. And if you're not getting into the system, you can ask Adrian or Nicholas for help. And again, the details are also in the chat. Okay, so I think we can start. I mean, this is obviously the most the highly voted question. I'm going to pick the top 2 ones. So the first one is, are the expectations of social innovation as a tool not too high? And shouldn't we rather be more critical and conscious about the limitations of the generalization of social innovation? So there are 2 questions, actually. So that's the first one that we are going to select. We're going to come back to the Mentimeter. So I'm going to pick 2 questions, and then we're going to talk about them, and then we're going to come back. So do continue to vote and continue to submit your questions. And then the question that is upvoted now, it was a tie. Is what forums do we concretely actually have to bring social innovators and local leaders into the EU decision-making process? So they weren't posed to anyone in specific. I'm going to ask Nicholas to stop sharing his screen so that we can see the panelists again. So the forums questions we're going to take second, and the first one about the high expectations and the risks of generalizing about social innovation. I'm going to ask if there is a panelist who would like to start us off on that first question. So maybe we can also, Adrian or Nicholas can also copy it in the chat so that everyone can see it.
Tessa, I see I'm the only one with the camera on, so probably the colleagues are still grabbing a glass of water. I'm happy to get us started. I see now. Oh, okay. I'm joined by 2 more.
Yeah. Sarula is here too, and Emily too. Yes.
Maybe I can share some thoughts in regards to this from my side. I don't know whether the expectations around social innovation are too high. I think it's very much depending on what kind of definition are we applying to social innovation. Coming from the perspective that I was trying to introduce earlier from the local government side, a lot of the social innovation is not only on the ground with citizens, of course, where a lot of different measures and science-based solutions are also being, of course, implemented for a very long time within the communities, but also in the way that we approach, for example, governance frameworks and different ways of making policy across levels. So this emphasis that I have put before, multi-level governance, I think is still something that is probably not as innovative because it's something that we've been talking about quite a bit, but it's still probably not fulfilling its overall potential. So maybe the expectation might be high, but I don't think we have spoken about it quite yet enough. So keeping on bringing it up, I think it's still very helpful, especially when we're talking about revising completely our system changes.
Come on.
Sorry, when we are thinking about changing a little bit our way of thinking around how do we want to implement the energy transition on the ground. So,
okay, thank you, Georgia. Is there maybe someone from the Commission who wants to also respond on whether the expectations of social innovation are not too high and the risk of generalizing about social innovation too much?
Yeah, I can also say a few words about it, because for me, of course, here we were talking about social innovation in general, so it can sound very ambitious, but I think we have to realize that in, let's say, like in real life, we break that down a bit. So we would focus on specific areas such as energy, such as biodiversity, and there I think it becomes a bit more realistic. So yeah, no, I think social innovation has great potential to overcome societal challenges, but yeah, of course, we cannot solve everything with one big social innovation. We need to take different packages and do it separately. And of course, it's embedded in social innovation. Most of the time, one solutions will answer to more than one issues. Yeah, I think we have to break it down. Thank you.
Yeah, if I can jump in also.
Yes.
I would like to, I mean, it's a personal opinion. I've always thought of our thinking of social innovation as a self-sustaining ambitious, because it is true. I mean, we have to put forward this ambition. For the research program, we have it as a cross-cutting issues that we're trying to push, because we clearly see the potential of this for overcoming the barriers and reaching our target, especially in energy. But as I said, and what Emily was trying to say in her presentation as well, we clearly know that there are challenges, especially like within the landscape that we work with, because we know that social innovation, like the outcomes, cannot be most of the time fully grasped. We know that there are barriers in understanding how can social innovation sustain over time. Having these dynamics on the different administrative levels that are in place, like what Georgia said and Dimitra said, Stavroula also. I mean, understanding whether we need to change the way the governance of this different level is implemented to unlock the full potential of social innovation. I mean, we're not going high, skyrocketing on ambition, but we need to push it, because while developing projects, we receive the results, we understand what's missing, so that we can sustain the ambition. I mean, we can push it, because then we can push the ambition even higher next time.
And do you see an opportunity to include this more critical awareness of the fact that social innovation is not unequivocally a force for good, and that you have to understand the impacts, for instance, when you do certain experiments. Is that also something that you see an opportunity for moving forward?
From a personal perspective, definitely. That's why we're trying to embed these cross-cutting aspects like gender, SSH, social innovation in the policy making per se. I mean, I've mentioned a new initiative that we're developing, the digitalization of energy action plan. And this is on the energy policy side, but we understand the value of designing it through a social innovation lenses. And I think that ensuring the participation of the representative of public authorities, the citizens, business and industry, again, the helix that we mentioned, in the design, development and implementation is pivotal. I mean, we need to, as we in the Commission, we have the goal of co-creating our policy together and the research program together. It is important also that we ensure that the civil society participates in the co-design as well. That's why I found very interesting the question on the platform.
Yeah, exactly. Dimitris just wanted to make a statement too.
Yes, thank you very much. I think it's a very interesting question. First of all, I would argue firstly that first of all, social innovation, I cannot really consider it as a tool, but I can consider it as a process. So this is the first thing. So it is rather an ongoing process on that. On the second, on the same question, I would. So energy communities are a tool in order to, in the direction of, let's say, social innovation. The second comment would be that I think that what we must be more critical or conscious about are the limitations if we don't actually implement and if we don't go towards this direction. So I think that social innovation has this potential, and we have we have seen when people enter the scene and take up initiatives and take up, are part of processes, and this process becomes more inclusive, and the benefits are being, fairly spread among the communities, and then this kind of scales up in this design. It always helps the process to either speed up or to, become much more efficient. Because it becomes some kind of part of everyone's, let's say, effort. So yeah, of course, it's not an easy process, but I think it's a process that we definitely must recognize, and it is a process that we definitely need to address and move along as part of it. So this was my contribution.
Thanks. Yes.
And maybe, Tessa, if I can just briefly add to what Dimitris mentioned, is that social innovation can stay at the theoretical level if there is no actual policy backing it up and enabling this potential to materialize, and actually enabling people to participate in the case of energy communities to the energy market. So of course, both at the EU level and the national level, regulatory aspect is very important.
So in order to stop the generalization, the policy has to become more concrete, if I understand you correctly. Yes. Okay, so now talking about concrete, what forums, the question number 2, what actual forums, like examples, links, are there to bring social innovators and local leaders into the EU decision-making process, and then particularly focusing on Fit for 55? Who wants to shoot? Tell us. What do we know?
Well, I'm not aware of any ad hoc particular platform being created, but what I can say from my perspective, I know that especially from what concern civil participation and youth engagement, we use the Climate Pact initiative as one of the main initiatives to create platform to engage with all segments of citizens. We will have the citizens panels at the Conference of the Future of Europe, and we have all the initiatives that we will undertake for the European Year of Youth. We have also different channels of youth association in DG Energy. We work with the European Youth Energy Network. We are trying to establish more and more contact with our different stakeholders, but from what I'm aware of, as far as DG Energy is concerned, we're not preparing any particular ad hoc platform, but I don't know whether Emily has a general idea from the DGRI perspective.
Yeah, I can add a few things. Well, under Horizon 2020, there were a few projects that were funded to really create a network of social innovators that would be linked with the European Commission. Just one that comes to my mind is the Social Innovation Community, the SIC, if some of you here may have heard of it. Unfortunately, something that we see is that those platforms, those projects tend to disappear once the funding stops. So that's actually a challenge I could have also mentioned in the presentation. But yeah, so there are projects like this, but they don't always last, unfortunately. Then really more from the side of the DG RNI, every year we organize the RNI days. They bring also civil society there. So it's really a forum where we want to hear from the citizens. When we were designing Horizon Europe, we really took into account citizens' contribution. So that's that's a forum where those kind of exchanges can take place.
Yeah.
Also, I mentioned it during my presentation, but there is this new European Bauhaus initiative. it's very broad. It's ambitious. It has a lot of objectives, and it really aims at bringing everyone together: students, civil society, academics, the helix that Christian mentioned. So that would be also a place where social innovators could really jump in and intervene. And they do have this NEB, New European Bauhaus community that invites everyone to contribute to the initiative.
That's really good to know. Yeah, and then maybe just one more speaker from also the civil society point of view.
Yeah, I think this question is very topical for us because REScoop.eu is a federation that exactly tries to do that, gather all our members around Europe, and having discussions, being a platform for bringing them to decision-making process at the EU level. Specifically, we have internal working groups, and we have one on advocacy, gathering all our members interested on the topic and discussing all our topics internally in order to make decisions that we then bring to the European level and consultations that the Commission is taking out and so on and so forth. And of course, in terms of the European level, also what Dimitris mentioned before, the Community Power Coalition is a forum that enables discussions and intervention to decision making from EU institutions and organizations.
Okay, thank you.
I can also add to that
very shortly.
Just wanted to flag a new initiative that I think is something to definitely be able to watch out for. This is in particular, of course, dedicated to cities, but with the expectation also to engage as much as possible, both private actors, but also different types of entrepreneurs, investors, citizens, NGOs. I'm referring in particular to one of the newly launched missions of the European Union, the one on climate neutral and smart cities. This was launched at the end of last year, and really the idea is to really lever as much as possible all of these different actors to create impactful strategies and to be able also to implement action to become climate neutral. So I think that's an interesting one where innovation definitely will have a role. And then also I want to remind, of course, everyone of the different networks that are already existing, and that's maybe to also provide some solutions to the issue of social innovation becoming at scale, because that's of course part of the problem. Beyond the pilot, how can we replicate what is being tested on the ground? Things like the Covenant of Mayors, for example, still provide a good output for a lot of innovators that are interested on the ground to work with the municipalities and share the knowledge across Europe.
Yes, thank you, Georgia. I think we have a good list that we've been of forums that we've been typing along with. I think it's good to move to some next questions. Nicholas, if you don't mind sharing your screen again. I think there are two questions that we can take together. Caroline in her presentation mentioned the importance of an evidence base, and two questions are going deeper in on this. So what type of metrics could we introduce to better gather data about SI impacts? And then the second one is also about the evidence base, and it would be interesting to see data around how that perception changes once projects emerge. So I think it's best to take the first one about the type of metrics, indeed, as one of the next question. So Caroline, also feel free to join, I would say. And then for the second question, what I see on my screen after the two metrics questions is Emily and Caroline, you criticize that social innovation is not explicit in Fit for 55, but specific forms of it are. Could you elaborate which benefits you see to label these explicitly as social innovation? So we talked about generalizations before, but just a bit more about, okay, so what is the actual advantage of using the term social innovation? So those are the two questions. Thank you for copying them in the chat. So about the type of metrics to gather data about SI impacts in the energy, is there anyone who can start us off on that?
I could say a few words. I don't know if you can hear me, Tessa?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
You already shared very interesting metrics in your presentation.
So yeah, I mean, social indicators that reflect basically initiatives that are based on, participation of citizens and communities could be, could provide some good metrics. That would be, for instance, the level of energy poverty in the region, if it is being reduced, for instance, through interventions with energy communities, or let's say the adequacy of building stock, or other could be, let's say, the level of income, or the penetration of renewables, and other metrics that refer to, long-term unemployment and what could that entail. So there are metrics that could be used. The main, let's say, question would be, what would be those specific metrics that could actually reflect, let's say, the improvement that is being, let's say, performed through the initiatives that could be taken from the local communities or citizens that participate in the energy transition. So I will stop here.
Maybe this I could also add to what Dimitris mentioned, because as I told you before in the presentation, we are engaged in a project on mapping the social impact of energy communities. And maybe I could briefly just tell you what methodology we followed so far. Maybe it's useful on the question on how to gather data. So firstly, we developed a survey that people could reply to. And we gathered a lot of information in this regard. Then we had a workshop with experts that then also fed with specific information and literature. And then we set up these indicators, social impact indicators that I mentioned, that now we plan to also test with specific energy communities as case studies. So this is a methodology that can be followed in case people want to actually gather more data, and I can send you in the chat already a short report explaining that.
Thank you very much.
Maybe I can quickly add to this.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So within the Sonnet project, we also had an evaluation component where our partners in Zurich looked at this, and data is available for some dimensions, for some of the benefits of social innovation, and for others it's a bit harder to collect, but it's really important to do so. And the question is also then, who will do this? There are lots of initial suggestions also from other areas than energy, like how to find indicators for social innovation. But then obviously it needs to be rolled out. And at one point there needs to be agencies who would be responsible for doing that, so that we have the data easily available within Sonnet. It was quite tedious. We also designed a survey, for example, to collect the kind of data from the diverse types of social innovation that are happening across Europe.
So,
yeah. Tessa, can I just briefly jump in? I mean, I just want to add that our colleagues from the JRC in Petten are also continuously undertaking analysis of social innovation in energy project, especially in Horizon 2020, and the social innovation that were investigated in the projects that were analyzed ranged from what kind of social innovation topic was taken into account, what kind of behavioral change type was addressed, and the impact that the project had on energy issues like the energy poverty reduction, job creation in general, the reducing of the trust issues for the onboarding citizens into the energy technologies, and the involvement of local communities. We have our colleague from GRC Petten in the room with us today, so I am sure that he will share the findings in the chat if need be. Otherwise we can, but just to underline that we have colleagues who also have this in mind, so the analysis of data is ongoing from the Commission side as well.
And do you feel like that's finding its way to policy evaluation?
Well, as I, of course, Tessa, I mean, what Emilia said, and I've tried to highlight, for us, the feedback to policy exercise is at the center of our policy making, because we have to gather data. We sit on so much data coming from the deliverables, so we have to be able to feed back into the policy making. This is very important for us.
I realized that one of the questions that was voted up was about metrics, was specifically about one metric that Dimitris shared, namely I think it was it 61%? Or even more, or 89% of people who said they would support community energy locally. And our audience member asks what the cohort was for this statistic, and whether that perception changes once actual projects emerge.
Yeah. So yeah, as I said, this was a very recent poll in November or December 2021 that was conducted in 10 countries on behalf of European Climate Foundation. So the percentage is 86% for Europeans that would like to, that are willing to and see positive the installation of renewables, and 61% likely to enter an energy community. 61% is a really high percentage, especially taking into account that we still don't have transposition in most of the member states. So people do see that there is a need and the will in order to move into this direction. But in order to reply also to this question, in general, when projects do succeed, and it makes sense. Like, I'm a part of an energy community that we, for instance, get very cheap, clean electricity. For our own houses, let's say, we also provide free electricity for vulnerable ones. So people, during this process and after the project is realized, they come closer and they become proud of what they have been doing, and they feel that this has to be replicated further. So if we have a successful project, then the acceptance is, of course, getting higher in that front. So yeah, if we have projects that are realized in a good manner, then of course the acceptance for renewables and the acceptance of energy communities increases.
Okay.
That was actually my question. I just wanted to come back and similar to Dimitris, actually, we've not quite got an energy community because of the policy restrictions, but doing this for work and home life in one of those people, it's been really interesting seeing the initial survey results that we did, where we had only one objector in the whole village, and then when you put an X marks a spot for a solar farm, you then get a lot more objectors coming out. So in the model of community energy, what we need to recognize is actually what's our percentage of support do we require that we're going to go ahead with it? Because actually with the best will in the world, you're not going to get everybody supporting it, but for a community, it should be for the benefit of all. And it's a much more difficult sell when we're not able to do that local supply model. So what's the benefit for me is much more difficult to give certainly in the UK policy context.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Dimitris. Thank you very much, Matt, for your contribution. But I am just going to steer it back a bit more to.
All right, I'll write it in the chat.
Exactly. You guys need to link. So about this fact that social innovation is not explicitly found back in the Fit for 55 plans, Emily and Caroline, could you elaborate on why you think it would be beneficial to use this term?
I can go first if it's okay for you, Caroline. For me, it's very simple. It's just that it's linked to the challenge I was talking about during my presentation. Is that social innovation is not always well understood by people, by policymakers. There is a lack of knowledge about it. So I think it is important to, when there is social innovation in a proposal, in a legislative text, to have it mentioned so that policymakers can really get more accustomed to the term, to what it does, to what social innovation can accomplish, and then it would be feeding itself. You know, it's, if they know what is social innovation, if they know what it can do, then they will be more willing to have it in future proposals. So I think for me, having it in the text is more, it's a matter of raising awareness, because people sometimes do social innovation without realizing that they are doing so. So it doesn't really do justice to social innovation. And the more people will be really explicitly aware, the more there will be social innovation, I think.
Yeah, if I can just add to this, one point was the same thing, awareness raising, because really, yes, among people who have worked on social innovation, it's like an old concept, but with the energy domain and energy policy, it's not that old, and there is lots of focus on technological innovation. And so when people even read innovation, that's what's like, you know, what you think, that's your mindset. But the mindset needs to change. When you think about innovation in a social technical way, you know, we need this combination. And so if that's something that you continue reading, then you're being reminded, oh yeah, there's this dimension as well. So that then you can look into this and have communications and further thinking about how to do this, and don't forget about this aspect. So this is one thing, this awareness and mindset shifting. The second thing comes like more from the perspective of the diversity of social innovation. So yes, of course, we know certain types are already very familiar, like energy cooperatives or presuming. So these you would pick up and you can specifically mention them. But what about new types, you know, that we don't even know about yet? You know, that's about the beauty about innovation. It's new combinations, new things, and also with social innovation. So if they don't have lots of attention, if they don't exist as such yet, then they wouldn't be recognized at all if there's no reference to social innovation as an objective of policy. So to really harness this potential of the diversity of options out there, you need to have like a generic term to be open for all of and inviting to all of these different opportunities.
And Tessa, maybe one last sentence to exactly say what Caroline was saying. The wording, a specific wording, shows acknowledgement, and then the acknowledgement gives a strong signal also to the member states that will then have to transpose these new files. So that, in my mind, is very simple.
That's good summary. Thank you very much for that, Savlula. So I want to pick one more question. So go back. Be sure to go back to the forum and vote. But before we do that, Christiana has to leave us, unfortunately. So I just want to ask if she wants to give us a closing sentence of what her like takeaway or like a final reflection that you want to share before you have to leave us, Christiana.
Thank you, Tessa. Yes, indeed. I wanted to share one general main takeaway that I have from today's discussion is that the ambition that we have as Commission and civil society as a whole is kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So the more we are ambitious and the more we integrate it, the more impactful we will be. But as we are just saying now, if we don't bring it to the surface, if we don't fully grasp the impacts and the benefits of bringing social innovation into the design of our policies, this cannot happen. So I really praise the organization of this debate today, and I invite you all, if you want to further discuss bilaterally with me, I would be really grateful to do so, so that we can raise this kind of awareness that we are reiterating we need the most. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christiana, for everything that you've shared today and for offering your continued collaboration. That's really lovely. Thanks and bye. All right, so very shortly, the very final question, just for short answers. Nicholas, what do we have on the scoreboard? I have three that are similarly scored. What measures are implemented? What can be done to get pen holders on board? And how to build the capacity, resources, skills, and funding to ensure stewardship. I think as ending on an action-based question is a good one. So what can be done and by whom to get pen holders on board with social innovators? So pen holders in the Fit for 55 writing or policy process. Who had? Can you name one specific action for me, Emily? Maybe to start off.
Well, again, I'm going to say the same thing, but really, I think raising awareness is so important. And the best way to do it, I think, is really to give concrete examples because it speaks a lot of people. Telling success stories about a social innovation that's worked really well. Yeah, be it the communities or the, I mean, yeah, having really concrete examples that demonstrate what social innovation can achieve.
Okay, clear. Starula, what
Yes.
do we need to do to get them on board?
I could also add something to that. I think actively participate, specifically discussing about the Fit for 55, actively participate in the negotiations, pushing for some amendments or provisions that will be more supportive in terms of, in our case, of energy communities in the different files. And also at the national level, I think it's important for people also to push for their governments, first of all, to transpose and overcome all these barriers that were mentioned before on the enabling framework, so that then energy communities can be able to develop at the national level too.
Georgia, from a city's perspective, what do you think cities could do?
Thank you. I think at large, it's important to foster as much as possible a mind shift really around the importance of continue acting together in the same direction. It's not something that is any longer desirable. It's something that should happen, and citizens and communities should be engaged within the energy transition process. From a very practical point of view, I think in particular, as Stavula was actually saying, at the national level right now, it's quite important to pass this message. This consultation with local and regional governments and with communities together with them needs to happen. And it has to be not only in the planning and implementation phase, but even in connecting this with the rollout, the funding mechanisms and the access to different resources so that we can actually implement and not only draft plans and commitment.
Great. All right, I'm going to keep those responses at that, because we have a beautiful graphic that Carlota Cataldi has made for us. I'm going to ask Adrian to pin her screen so that we can all have a look at it. She actually made two boards. So this is the board with the audience questions, and I'm going to ask particularly also the panelists to have a look to see if there's anything missing, because I'm going to ask them also for a closing sentence or closing takeaway. So what do we see here? We started off the discussion with the question, are expectations too high, and the risk of generalizing? And actually, we discussed that it is necessary to then be able to have a more nuanced discussion now. Let's see if we can zoom in.
I can zoom in, Tessa, if you want.
Yes, please, because it's
and also, and unfortunately my Wi-Fi wasn't working great, so I'm sure there is stuff missing because I had to get in and out. So please, let me know what's missing.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks for letting us know. We need to break it down, indeed, materializing policies. and then we have listed a list of the forums that people can actually jump onto to participate. If you can move to the right, then we moved on to the importance of metrics and how those can be used to actually make better policy. And there's a lot of data, but the flow needs to be picked up. And then finally, how to get the pen holders on board, and that again tied in with the discussion about branding and promoting and raising awareness about social innovation and its potential, and actively participating in the forums that we talked about before. Great. And I'm very curious also to see the first board.
Sure.
Charlotte, could you share that too?
Got it. Sure. So can you see it?
Yes, I can see it.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave it big, and I mean, you can ask me to zoom in if you want to.
Could you? It's quite pixelated when it's big, so maybe if you can just move to the first presentation.
Yeah. So the first one was this one, but I can go to the
Emily.
So I'm confident that you will give me more input afterwards, so that I can complete this and that can be shareable.
Absolutely. So what we will do, we have also taken a lot of notes, of course, and we're going to use these lovely images and summaries to communicate about our discussion and all the inputs that we gathered. Okay, so dear panelists, thinking about the board that you just saw, about our discussion and the points that were raised, what is, like, is there something that makes your heart beat, that you think we can't leave this session without us having talked or emphasized or talked about this when it comes to opportunities and challenges for the Fit for 55 and social innovation in energy? I'm going to ask to remove the spotlight so that we can see the panelists again. If you can see that, you can move to gallery view again. So Dimitris, can I ask you to oh, you just took a sip of water, to share with us your most important takeaway for this discussion?
Yeah, I think my takeaway regarding the need to move in the direction towards social innovation is, let's say, stronger than before entering this discussion. I already thought that this should be the way forward. I really think, and I really believe, and we really believe as well, as Friends of the Earth Europe, in system change and transformational changes that need to be done. And those changes cannot happen in the absence of society's participation. So we need to find good ways to collaborate. We need to find ways of working, and we need to advance also the work that we do on the social front. And this transformation can later on be reflected in advancing our ambition and fight and tackle problems that we face. So the main problem, the main issue is climate crisis, is the issue that 26 tried to solve, but we need to be more ambitious. The EU needs to be further more ambitious, and in order to do so, we must work all together on that, but we need to have very clear pathway in order to do so. So this would be my take, and I think I have to say congratulations for organizing this. I think social innovation is an element that is not easily, has not been widely addressed, and I think it is time to be further acknowledged and to unleash also the potential of people full of ideas, with creative, in order to tackle all the problems that we face in our everyday routine. So that would be on my side. Thank you very much again.
Thank you, Dimitris. Georgia, closing sentence statement. What are your main takeaway?
Thank you very much. I also want to echo the congratulations for the great event, for the great discussion, and thank you very much to all the panelists also for their thoughts. It was an absolutely enriching conversation from my point of view. I think from my take in general is that it's fairly easy still nowadays to fall into the trap to think that innovation is only technological or purely technological as a set of solutions. And I think today came across very strongly that this must not be the case. It's not only about engaging different actors within the quadruple EVIX approach that was mentioned a few times, but also in rethinking and reframing both the roles and responsibilities and the governance process that can enable all the actions that need to be undertaken on the ground so that we can deliver these solutions together. So as I said before, this is not something that is desirable. It's now time to make this something that it's absolutely necessary and understood by everyone in order to meet the objectives of the Paris Agreement, but also our vision for Europe. Obviously, we cannot go there without empowering all the different actors. And it's important to remind ourselves that all of the work that we are doing together, although it's extremely challenging, it's also a great opportunity, and it will be the biggest mistake not to make this opportunity for a transition also into an opportunity to make a better future for our communities. So looking forward to continue this conversation and to try to really make the change that is needed.
Thank you, Georgia. The last bit gave me goosebumps, so I think that's a good sign. Emily.
Well, I want to finish with a message of optimism. Because we live in exciting times. I mean, it can sometimes seem a bit scary, but it is truly very exciting. A lot of things are happening. We may think, and sometimes we may think it's sometimes a bit slow, and it is too slow given the urgency of the climate crisis. But things are moving. Things are moving. There are a lot of social and technological innovations emerging everywhere, so that's a sign of really will to live in a better world, to make the transition happen. As Dimitris said, and as Georgia said too, we have to work together to reach the Fit for 55 targets. And I think that policies more and more allow that. Everywhere you have new models of governance that emerge that are more participatory, that invite citizens to join the debate and to really shape those policies. So yeah, I think we are heading through really interesting times through a chance, and I'm confident that all together with social innovation, with technological innovation, we can really make the transition happen. So thank you very much for organizing this event. Thank you to the panelists and to the audience for the discussion and the very interesting questions.
Great, thanks, Emily. Then to finish it off, Starula.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, also for the great organization. This live drawing was impressive. Really enjoyed it. So from the REScoop.eu perspective, I'm always amazed with how much people are interested in participating in initiatives, in energy community initiatives. And we have always new members, and seeing people in the ground being interested to participate actively in the energy transition. And in a lot of countries, for example, in the Balkans, there are a lot of barriers because the model is very new. So as I indicated before, it's very important to have policies backing up and allowing people to participate, and also to highlight that now that energy communities are recognized as market actors in the European legislation, it is a right of people to being able to participate there. So it's also an action, time for action from people, and time for people to claim their energy rights at the local level, so that it will allow them to push for better legislation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Okay, so we will galvanize all the inputs that we've gotten for the policy dialogue, and I'm going to tell you how. Because, well, obviously you've already received the the policy briefing that you can refer to policy dialogue briefing, but we're also going to use these reflections to discuss them within our Sonnet research project and publish reflections on the outcomes in early spring 2022. And of course, Carlotta's graphics will be an important part of that too, and we'll also be sharing those on social media to get the word out about the importance of social innovation in energy for the Fit for 55. Exactly this raising awareness that we want to contribute to through this event. Then if you are keen to stay connected to everything that we're doing in Sonnet, there's an event on Central and Eastern Europe and social innovation on the 27th of January. There will be a webinar on financing energy transitions in February, and then we'll have a final conference, including a policy dialogue with Horizon Europe's sister projects to also exchange between us in April. So mark your calendars and stay tuned by registering for our newsletter and also checking out all the other resources that we have on our website that you might find interesting and might be helpful for you in your work, and also follow us on Twitter. And of course, you can also follow ICLEI to make sure that you're connected and get the heads up when there is a new Breakfast at Sustainability's event coming up. So that's our invitation from our side, to stay connected with Sonnet and Breakfast at Sustainability's. I want to thank all our panelists a lot for taking the time to contribute, and the audience for putting in questions and voting them up. And I look forward to continuing this conversation with all the people who are working on this and are motivated to push for social innovation in energy. And I wish you a beautiful rest of your day. And see you next time.
Thank you very much.
Tessa, for your moderation.
Thank you.
Enjoy your day. Thank you
everyone.
very much.
Yes, have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Bye.